Hey everybody, we're going to be talking about 3D shapes today. So 3D shapes in general, I'm sure you are aware of, the differences between them. So you have the 2D one where it's just, a flat circle, but when you go to 3D shapes, you kind of have a little bit more dimension. So you can this is more of like a line idea of, the roundness of the sphere. So 3D shapes are one of the key components for starting a character drawing or even a industrial scene drawing. Just spheres and rectangles and all different sorts of shapes are used as bases so that you can get an idea of how the character or whatever you're trying to achieve, how it will look. So a couple of 3D shapes, we're going to briefly go over. We have the sphere, we have the rectangle or square. This is usually achieved by making a rectangle, and then the best way to put it is, if you have a book in the house, put it standing up and kind of see from different perspectives, how do you see the side of the book? Like, is it as wide as this? Is it thinner? It's all up to the perspective. So kind of imagine the lines here. This is what the whole, rectangle would look like. You have cones. I think cones in general aren't used as often, but I think there's, it has individual uses. It's just not as commonly used for specifically character drawings. So circles and rectangles are mostly what you're going to want to use for character drawings. Now, I guess this is the full practice point where you have the circle here, and the circle can be represented as a head in a character drawing. Just because of its roundness, and most of the tops of the heads of characters will be smooth. You might have, horns on certain ones, but it's a fairly dependable starting point for your drawings. Now, the reason why you also want to have it be 3D and not 2D, while you can still work with 2D if you're more comfortable with, kind of figuring out how flat certain parts of your character are and how, or what the dimensions are, to put it more, concisely. The reason why is when you have like a face connected to the rest of the character, obviously, your character probably won't have a completely circular face, so you might want to extend out and down. The lines are meant to if you can extend it down even more, create this 3D object of what the head is supposed to look like. So just kind of outline it a little bit better because it's a little bit covered by the rest of the lines. You have the head here, but because of this line and kind of the roundness, especially when you're starting out drawing spheres, the spheres can look a little bit flat, but with a lot of practice and kind of getting an idea of, how, the best hand gesture for drawing spheres, it gets a lot more comfortable. But by starting out with a 3D shape and kind of having an idea of, how the sphere is tilting, you can kind of have like a head base. Like, here's a very simple head base that you can use for your character. That you can add hair on top of it, and all sorts of other things. So for the body, a lot of shoulder joints would be spheres as well, because usually the shoulders aren't going to be super pointy. Depends also on character style, so you might want your characters to have super pointy shoulders, but just in a general drawing sense, a lot of people don't use spheres. So you have these spheres here, and the body actually is mostly comprised of different types of rectangles. So you have kind of a rectangle looking at the top here. Now, of course, it's a really boxy looking character, and that's where people who have had, a decent more practice with shapes won't have to worry about, making this whole box because they'll have it through muscle memory. But just starting out, kind of having the box as a reference gives a little bit more structure to the character and making sure that you don't, accidentally make the character look like a stick figure. And it adds a little bit more shape. So now okay, well, I can maybe go past the rectangle a little bit and inch in towards the waist, but then expand out afterwards. And then since the shoulders are there, kind of getting that area to work in your favor like this. So his shoulders or her shoulders are a little bit more scrunched up towards the neck. So it's not really, I guess, as relaxed as it should be. But erasing this rectangle afterwards, you can kind of get an idea of, okay, well, this is the general shape of what you want the character to be. Now, for just as I guess a warning, I wouldn't make the rectangles or the spheres super dark, especially if you're using pencil. Definitely would not recommend a pen because you can't get rid of it afterwards. Make sure to shade in, kind of like the color differences here. Imagine this dark color is when you press down on the pencil really hard, and this one is if you use it very lightly. That way you can erase it afterwards after you add eyes and hair or whatever you want to add onto the character's face. And it makes it a lot easier so that you don't see those, creases or lines afterwards, which can be fairly distracting depending on how hard you press down on the paper, if you are using paper. For computers, it's a little bit or a lot more easier because you don't really have to worry about, how hard you press down on things, but definitely a huge thing for paper. Don't press down super hard when you're starting out with your base shape drawings. Now, I guess the one use that you could use for a cone is if you want to do horns. Most people that I've seen haven't done this sort of thing with, drawing a specific cone for it. Usually they kind of have an idea of what the cone should look like, so they don't have to worry. Like this one was done without a cone and this one was. So you kind of have an idea here and you get rid of that. I would say just lean on 3D shapes however you need to. If you feel that it's like you need it a lot for the structure, don't be ashamed to do so, because they really help with your just fundamental skills for drawing, so that in the future you won't have to lean on it as much and you can kind of just draw from memory or draw from your imagination and kind of put down the lines properly so that the character looks fairly decent for not having any prep work. But in a beginner and even intermediate sense, I would definitely still be using 3D shapes for your character drawings, since especially with arms and legs, they tend to get a little bit more rounded. Like you don't really have the muscle structure or kind of this joints idea that you have. Like for legs, you would kind of, even just using stick figure I think would be better than not using anything at all. You have the joint here, you have pretty much what the kneecap would be, then you have the leg, the I guess calf area, and then you have another joint and you have the foot. That sort of thing, even if it's not exactly proportional to how normal legs look, having that sort of I guess base there allows you to then draw over it properly and then know, okay, I gotta make sure I have a hard corner here, and then extend out and down, and here's where the foot is, so I'm gonna draw the foot, kind of like a very cartoony foot. But then it gives a lot more structure, and it also kind of grounds the character a little bit more if you have this sort of prep. So feel free to experiment with drawing different 3D shapes, because they all have their own, I guess, unique uses to them. They're not going to be used in every case, except for spheres and rectangles are typically very often used for character drawings and drawing bodies and bases. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to go back. Feel free definitely to practice on 3D shapes. It may seem really boring, but kind of getting that down and getting that out of the way so then you can get into character drawing, it really helps with kind of avoiding a lot of troubles where you have things too scrunched up or things that seem too flat in the future. So again, hope you enjoyed the video, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.